This new year comes with a lot of hope for investors. Hope for relief from interest rates, the rising cost of living, inflation, and a comeback for faltering investments. But what about hope for a better supply chain and global production? Well, most recently, tech giant Apple has been facing major criticism for its operations in China, and its shares are taking the hit. In November, Apple's iPhone factory in Zhengzhou, China, was clogged with violent protests. In fact, the protests sacked the factory, with as many as 300,000 workers caught the attention of the world through online videos, where workers could be seen throwing items and pushing for their rights. Well, following this upheaval, Apple decided to begin shifting production to other Asian countries, and some say there may be something to learn from all of this. Well, joining us now to talk more about this is Brendan Caldwell, director at Caldwell Securities Limited. Brendan, welcome back to Forum Daily.
Thank you, Nima. Great to be here. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Now, when it comes to new things, you actually had quite a positive outlook back in March 2020 when the COVID-19 pandemic first came about. Now, your hope was that the global crisis would maybe usher in a new era of global cooperation and partnership. So where are we now when it comes to this, Brendan?
Well, I've got a lot of hope, Nima. I still have a lot of hope. I think just before Christmas, when I was talking to Nathaniel, I'd said that I really hoped there would be a ceasefire of some sort over Orthodox Christmas in Ukraine. While one side has made overtures around that, the Ukrainians, and understandably, aren't necessarily buying. But I really do hope for some sort of permanent peace in Ukraine. But even a Christmas peace would be a wonderful thing. In terms of the world as a whole, what I'd hoped was this global crisis, however it started, wherever it started, isn't the issue whence it's all over the world. It's about, I would hope, people coming together to fight it. That's not what's happened. People have gone, the trend has accelerated toward nationalism, toward regionalism. We've seen it even here in Canada. Even a few years ago, Alberta separatism wasn't actually a thing. Now it's openly being talked about, and never mind around the world, where we've seen over the previous half century a greater degree of global cooperation as a result of trade. Now, nationalist protectionist barriers are coming up, and obviously, as we're seeing on the news every night, it's got even more aggressive than that.
From the sounds of it, we may be heading in the opposite direction, Brendan. Now, when it comes to Apple itself, we mentioned what's going on with Apple in our intro, and you actually spoke about what's going on with Apple to the media. So tell us a little bit more about your thoughts on what's going on with this company.
Yeah, I think that was our just before New Year's interview was, Apple, as Father Ray D'Souza in his column about a few days ago, a week ago, had pointed out, the symbol of a bite out of an apple reminds one of Genesis and the forbidden fruit on the tree. And as his National Post column pointed out, it's just a little bit too ubiquitous, a little bit too universal to see that apple symbol everywhere. It almost has, for some, apocalyptic overtones. But leaving all that aside, Apple's been in tough in China, where one of its suppliers, Apple doesn't make actually any of its own stuff, or very little of its own stuff. One of its suppliers, Foxconn, had, what did you say, 300,000 people in a factory? I mean, that's the population of Quebec City or Hamilton, who have been, because of the COVID restrictions, locked in there. It's been a very difficult situation. Now, Apple has taken some hits over that, but one is left questioning why one is dealing with and cooperating to such a degree with the Chinese Communist Party at all. Much as I said about global cooperation, the barriers do seem to be going up, and the distinction between good and evil becoming a little bit more crisp.
Definitely something to consider, Brendan. Just about a minute left here, but is there anything that investors should take away from all of this, from this conversation we're having today?
Well, I said it was about hope. And I think from a market perspective, every time I chat with people, they say, oh, the recession, the recession, the recession. Yeah, it's going to be a different recession given how robust the employment market is, how well companies are doing. And as I pointed out, for the first time in my working career, it's been possible for companies to actually make money by raising prices rather than just cutting costs. I think that might actually end up being a good thing for everybody, because cost cutting has led to, well, different sorts of practices that haven't been as helpful and maybe even contributed to some of what we're seeing in the world today. So as a sole means of making money, I don't think it's as good as perhaps companies that are delivering good and better products and are able to get those delivered, being able to raise their prices. So a lot of good may come to investors and the companies they invest in 2023.